Can someone answer me this? Is home ownership really the key, the goal, the incentive to start, establish, maintain, and/or grow wealth in the United States of America today in 2026? Or has everything changed? Is it now a scam? Is it now something that people who own homes, people who invest in homes, the government telling us to do because it's what makes sense, because it's the staple of the American dream, or because we need people to succumb to the inevitability that you will remain broke, you will remain stuck, trapped, and optionless? Maybe things have changed since the baby boomers, but for a lot of us, millennials and Gen Zs, as we're getting older, maybe home ownership isn't a goal. Maybe home ownership isn't a route. Maybe if we stay away from buying in to part of this little system, to part of this American dream, maybe we can be okay. If this is your first time seeing Black, please hit the subscribe button. Please like, please comment. Let me know if you bought a home, how long you bought a home, where in the country you've bought. Let me know if you're looking to buy, if it's still an aspiration. Maybe it won't be after this, and maybe you'll do what you want because you're your own person, and who am I? But let's have some dialogue in the comments. So owning a home in America has been like always the dream for like, I guess, forever. For most people who are coming into this industrial age, like back in the 40s and 50s, right? Coming out of war, Black Americans, who were able to come out of the 60s and 70s to start home ownership, white collar employees, everybody wanted to kind of buy a home to establish a cadence of stability, to establish longevity and wealth building opportunity. So when you retired, basically, you don't have a home payment anymore. And then now we're kind of in the new age of, understanding investment and things like that. So now, as people came into like the 2000s, right? Obviously before the bubble in 08, 09, people wanted to invest in their property, right? So you're taking out HELOCs, before, a lot of times now, and definitely after you paid off your home, to renovate your home or to do some other things, maybe reinvest in another property, or people, move and sell, and live somewhere, downsize, want to travel more, or people rent out their home if they feel like selling doesn't make sense to them at that point, and they still want to have ownership over the home. Someone else is either covering all the bills as far as overhead if you still have a mortgage, and then, if you paid off your home, you just, someone else is basically covering the property taxes and utilities, right? So, ownership at least was a big and pivotal kind of turning point for a lot of people, especially people who are growing up in an age where, needing to be able to be somewhere without overhead changing constantly was beautiful. Before even getting to the investment part or the goal of being able to pay off something that you own in full, being able to, like I said, use a house now, not only just as your primary residence, but use it for some short-term income at least. Owning the home was pivotal. You could pass it to your children and grandchildren, as, a lot of, our ancestors and, grandfathers, grandmothers did, in the past. But I don't know, man. I think things changed. Now when you see stats like property taxes has increased by 3.7% in the last 12 months, and it's now outpacing inflation, and where inflation has already been outpacing the growth or the would-be growth of wages, that's kind of scary. It's kind of scary when you look at insurance, home insurance, that's needed, right? You need insurance to make sure, your property's in good hands, your asset is in good hands for different conditions, whether it's, you're in a negative weather or inclement weather area, and, things just happen with your home. So you need peace of mind by paying $50, $100, maybe $250 a month to be insured, right? Insurance is the name of the game. It kind of works both ways. It's supposed to be symbiotic. The insurance companies get premiums, and a lot of people don't make claims, if ever, with the duration of their insurance buy-in, and then it satisfies the owner, right? It satisfies the insurance holder because it secures you for something that could happen, not necessarily will happen. So we can kind of play it safe. So if we're only paying 5 to 10% of what our total overhead is, and in respect to just insurance, what insurance will cost due to a detrimental factor or detrimental event that can happen, then it makes sense. We're working, we can get our insurance, and that's just, all covered, especially that it's escrowed or it's paid in an escrow account. So we're paying all at once with our principal, obviously our interest, you know, that basically makes up our mortgage payment. But outside of property taxes, insurance is spiking too, 22+% year over year. So there's a lot of people in different parts of the country, different parts of America, who at year one may have purchased a home to where their mortgage, interest rate, insurance, property taxes is escrowed, right, at say maybe $2,500 a month. And then maybe year 4, year 5, your essential mortgage payment doubles because property taxes increase, your insurance increase, right? Even if you have a fixed rate. So it's crazy, guys. And I think a lot of these companies, they're all connected somehow, some way. Everybody knows everybody, when you're the owner, whether you believe it or not. And I'm saying that because it's like, yeah, interest rates are at 6.7, maybe just under 7% right now, which is extremely high after 4 or 5 years ago when everything was extremely low during COVID. So it's like people aren't buying or selling as much as we did 4 to 5 years ago. So outside of interest, these companies are making their money somehow, some way. You know what I'm saying? Like they got to make it back where, the homes are being assessed maybe with exaggeration, so that increases your property taxes. Different things happen, with weather and, funding for obviously insurance providers. The Iranian war has affected basically everything, as far as inflation. So, that is always a key factor, especially in 2026. So a lot of people who's bought in the last 3 to 4 years, obviously including myself, right, are feeling or may soon feel the wrath or the change, the redirection of what home ownership really looks like after COVID. you know, I was watching some videos yesterday to where people are seeing a stupid or ridiculous amount of change with their property taxes and their insurance. Insurance is like double or tripling, which is pretty crazy to me. Because I looked at my insurance premium and I'm like, it didn't change within the 5 years I had my first house. And luckily I just sold it. I was lucky enough to sell it. Lucky, even though it undersold. And that's something I talked about in another video. And I was lucky that my property taxes weren't heavily assessed or reassessed year over year when I had my first home. Now I got to be careful about how property taxes and insurance look for my current home that I have, that I'm currently renting out. So of course my goal is to sell it, guys. Need to get rid of that attachment. That's a debt, that's a liability, and it's just going to get worse for homeowners because we're entering a new age. We're entering just a different time, guys, to where everything we thought made sense doesn't make sense anymore. So back to what I was saying, because I was cutting myself off. I was watching some videos yesterday where someone's property taxes for the year went from $1,800 to around $30K. That's like a 3,000 plus increase. So next year, or within the next couple months, whether you're escrowed or not, I guess, you're going to have to start paying an extra $2,200, $2,300 a month. That's a whole extra job. You get what I'm saying? It's insanity, This woman made a good point. It's like even after you buy your home, especially if you're in a zoning area to where everything is going up around you value wise, right? And like you bought your home, say you have your home for 10, 15 years, and then you pay it off, at 10 or 15 years or after 30 years, right? You want to assume, a great return on your investment, even on paper, even if you're not really looking to sell. But then your property taxes raise. Then the insurance can possibly raise because your home is valued. Your home it becomes a liability if something happens, right? Because your home costs more to a potential buyer. So this is just all assumptions, right? But outside of paying still HOA, CDD, depending on if you're in a subdivision or whatever, utilities, obviously, because you're still living in a house, even after you pay off your mortgage, guys, you're still paying property taxes and homeowners insurance. So a quick example, at year one, you bought your home and, including having your PMI because you didn't put down more than 20%, your mortgage is at $2,500. But say you pay off your home loan, right? On time. Let's just say you pay it off within 25 to 30 years. Obviously, you paid a lot of interest into it, which is a whole other topic. But now you don't have a mortgage. You don't have that principal. You're not worried about that interest. The loan is done. But then, guys, over the last 25 to 30 years, say you bought in 2000 and it's now 2025, 2026. The property tax is raised. So your bill, your mortgage, and I'm just assuming there wasn't any change, right? The first 25 years. Assuming in this hypothetical example, nothing changed a year prior to you paying off your home. So you've always paid $2,500 a month. But property taxes increase, insurance could have increased. We're talking about just the year after you paid off your home. So now it's like you're still paying the same mortgage because it doesn't matter what it's labeled as. $2,500 is still coming out of your pocket, whether it's towards mortgage, insurance, the whole escrow, right? Or just property taxes and other things. You know what I'm saying? So it's crazy. And it's like we really don't think about the future, the what if, inflation and changes just in the government, changes with HUD, in the housing market. We don't really think about this 2 or 3 decades in the future because we're so excited for home ownership, stability for our kids, wealth building, legacy leaving, that's what we're thinking about. So it's like, do we truly ever own our home? If we have to continue to pay something, it's one thing to pay utilities, right? It's one thing to pay insurance, but to continue to pay property taxes, even after paying off your home, property taxes increasing. Can it be fixed during home ownership? Really, guys, ask yourself this question. Is America looking out for my best interest as I maneuver towards retirement and get into retirement? At retirement, I shouldn't have a car payment or payments, and I shouldn't have a mortgage anymore. My overhead should have shrunk. My debt should have shrunk. And I'm living off of my reward of being a contributor to society, paying my debts. I'm paying taxes every time I get a check. I'm paying into Medicare. I'm paying into Medicare. I'm paying into my Social Security. I'm paying into my 401k. So I'm already getting taxed, living in the moment. I bought a house when I started my job, when I got out of college, that I'm already in debt of. And I still have to pay property taxes. I still have to pay insurance because I need to be insured, and I still live in the house, so I have to pay my utilities. So a lot of people, even paying off their house, guys, are still looking at paying $2,000 to $3,000 a month minimum, even after paying off their house. This is why people can't retire. This is why people go back to work. This is why people foreclose and file bankruptcy. This is why stuff is happening, So I want to end on this, man, and women. Does home ownership still make sense? If you're under 40, right, does it still make sense to buy a home? A lot of people felt or are feeling this trap and they're looking to sell their home, or they at least want to. They're talking to their spouse and talking to financial advisors and talking to lenders, talking to their parents about, hey, I want to sell my home because this doesn't make sense. I need to downsize. But a lot of people bought around COVID or right before COVID when interest rates were between 2% and 3%. So even if you sell your home, even if you're lucky, Even if you hit the lottery with selling your home, getting back 25% from what you paid into, right? You know, assuming you bought a home for $200,000 in this example, and then you sold your home for 250,000. You know, paying off your loan for 4 to 5 years. You know, maybe 6, 7 years, and then obviously you're selling it for 250. So from you purchasing it to someone else purchasing it, that's a 50K, difference. So you could possibly make back 50 to 60K, depending on, commissions and whatever else you have to do towards the home for closing and all this stuff. So even if you can make a little profit, where are you going to buy? Even if you can buy the same priced home, you can find something that's synonymous to what someone is buying from you, even if your interest rate is doubled. Property tax is already assessed higher. Insurance from when you bought is going to be higher. You already got to get a conventional loan because you're not a first-time buyer for most people. You get what I'm saying? So that's more upfront. So like we're looking at all this stuff, guys. A lot of people feel trapped. I just think back to what we've been taught, whether it's directly or indirectly, whether we went to school and someone taught us, or we were taught in trade, or we were taught in church, or obviously taught at home to buy instead of rent, or to buy because you can leave this home for your kids. But I'm like, we can't even leave this home for ourselves. We can't even stay in our house anymore. I mean, I can't even think about having kids. This is a whole nother video. This is a whole nother topic. A lot of people can't even think about having kids because it's hard to afford living for their own. I can't be a parent where I'm still needing to be parenting myself. So guys, let me know in the comments. If this is your first time seeing Black, hit the sub button, leave a like, and let's talk about it. Is home ownership still worth it? I think the trajectory changed. The things I'm hearing now, I thought wasn't going to happen for another couple years, and it's starting to rock. It's starting to happen, guys. It's like, it's two things, maybe three. People are struggling because they can't own a home, because they can't get into a situation where they are in a stable environment, a stable living situation. So people living in their cars, people living in hotels, storages, living from house to house with parents, with friends. You got that kind of, I guess, group. And then you got the people who were able to buy barely. And then you're dealing with all this home ownership struggles that can possibly look more tedious and look more detrimental than the first group I mentioned. And then you got the people who bought their home decades ago, paid off their home recently in the last couple years, and are still feeling that tussle with still owning their home. Although they paid off the interest and principal, it's like they didn't pay off their home. It's like they still are renting it from the government, from the county. I don't know, guys. Does it make sense? People can't buy, people can't hold, and people can't sell their home in 2026 living in the United States of America. But you know who was winning? The banks, the county, people we continue to pay taxes to, people we continue to pay interest with. And it doesn't matter whether we hold our home for a year or 30 years, especially on the longer end, even when these homes foreclose, these short sales happen, or these auctions happen, the banks are going to get theirs. So if you're not part of the bank, are you really winning? Stuff we got to think about. Let me know in the comments, guys. Peace.